appeal, and it's one of the things I've heard dozens of times from folks to say, I want to get into real estate, I want to get into real estate, I want to get into real estate. And I'm like, I want you to get into real estate. It's just changed my family's life. To give you some perspective, we have enough passive income where my wife and I now have 180 days a year scheduled free days. We just got back from 30 days in Mexico. So it has the power to do that, no question. The question isn't, can it do it, does it work? The answer is yes. The question is, how are you going to run it? Because if you don't run it well, it will run you. Because the business, the capitalism, the business is merciless.
Yeah.
It cuts both ways. You market well, you'll have all the customers you want. You don't market, you're going to zero.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Omaha Real Deal podcast, where we dive deep with market leaders, innovators, and disruptors in the space of real estate and entrepreneurship. Today, we have a powerhouse guest for you guys. Meet Michael Kramer. He's a CEO and founder of Free by Real Estate. Michael's story is remarkable. He's built a real estate portfolio of over 400 units and has dedicated his life to help others achieve financial freedom. So get ready to dive deep into his story because he's going to share strategies, insights, and a lot of inspiration. So this episode's going to be packed with all that. So get ready. Michael, welcome to the Omaha Real Deal podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's a privilege.
Yeah, I know we've been rolling for a while now.
Yeah, and you set my expectation pretty high there, dude. So let's just calm down.
To believe it or not, I cut a lot of that stuff out. No, but good. you got a great story, Michael. I was really excited to research you. Like, I know we've known each other for quite some time, but just the level of success that you have had when I first met you to where you're today is unbelievable. It really is.
Thank you.
And I appreciate it because I know it's not always been easy. You know, it hasn't. I'm sure you face some. I know for a fact you face adversity. You know, but you got a portfolio over 400 units. You know, you now a best-selling author. And you have a great family that supports you in your business and what you would like to do. That's a lot. That's a lot, man.
Yeah, I'm blessed.
Yeah.
Beyond blessed. I think if you asked anybody if I deserved any of that, they'd say no. But I feel super grateful. And I'm humbled, honestly, to be able to do what we do with our family, for our family. To me, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. I agree. Well, let's start. I want to start in the beginning a little bit.
Okay.
You know, I want our audience and our listeners to really know who Michael Kramer is, from who he is today, but where he started from. Tell me a little bit about your childhood and kind of like where you grew up, where you're from, and how was your childhood growing up, or who was Mike Kramer in high school?
Oh my gosh.
Let's start there.
So it was an amazing upbringing. I'm a Nebraska kid through and through.
Mm-hmm.
Born and raised in Nebraska. Well, I was born in Yankton, South Dakota. So the first few days was in South Dakota, and then I got smart and moved to Nebraska. And to give you some context, I was born number 9 of 10 kids.
Oh, wow.
And my mom and dad had 8 kids in 12 years. 10 years later, I was born. 6 years later, my little sister was born. So for 6 years, I was basically an only child. And I was born to parents that, at the time of my birth, I believe my mom was 40 and my dad was 50. So think about my little sister.
Wow.
My mom was 46, having a baby.
Unbelievable.
So it was sort of in the birth order book, you'd call it an only child,
Mm-hmm.
I guess. And so it was more like entertaining myself. So a lot of time, I felt like it was a Huckleberry Finn. We grew up on an acreage. I would ride motorcycles. I would hunt squirrels. I would, play. It was just a lot of self. And I had a white German Shepherd. That was my best friend. And we just ran the whole town. We lived in a small town. And the rule was come home when the whistle blows. In some of these small towns, there's still a whistle at 6 o'clock. And I learned that's so the farmers know in the field,
Mm-hmm.
come home for supper.
Yep.
So that was my upbringing. my dad owned a body shop. So my first love is cars.
Okay.
And I spent a lot of time working with my dad, building cars. In fact, he kind of introduced me to business for the first time. I remember the story that I think I was 14, Carlos, and growing up, the banker's grandson and I were friends.
Oh, okay.
And so I knew who his grandpa was, but I never talked to him. And we walked into the bank. We walked right into the president's, who was my friend's grandpa. And he was president of the bank. And my dad said, "This boy needs a loan," talking about me. I'm like, "What do I need a loan for?" He said, "Well, you're going to buy a car. You're going to fix the car, and you're going to sell the car." I'm like, "Okay." And the guy, the banker, already had the paperwork ready, and he said, "You need to sign it." I'm like, "I don't even have a signature. Like, how do I sign my name?" And my dad said, "Just write your name in cursive." So I wrote my name, and then the banker takes the paper, and he said, "Now your dad has to sign." And what that means is if you don't pay this loan, your dad has to pay it.
How old were you?
14.
Wow.
I believe I was 14. And so that got me started flipping cars.
Unbelievable.
I know. It's looking back, I had such a blessed and amazing experience. Amazing parents, no real hardship. I thought we were wealthy. I thought everything was great. And my cousins were my best friends. So it was an awesome upbringing. And I didn't know my dad saw in me a bent or a tendency to business.
Mm-hmm.
Because looking back now, I can see that he did me a favor, taking me to the bank.
Yeah, when you were 14 years old and you got your first loan, wow.
I know. This is in the 80s. So I don't know how lending has changed, but for me, it was scary, and I felt a real sense of responsibility. After 3 cars, my dad didn't have to co-sign the loans anymore.
Wow.
From the time I was 14 till I was 19, I bought, fixed, and sold 19 cars.
That's
and what's cool, Carlos, is, and I didn't plan on even telling you the story, but what's cool about that is my dad gave me a formula, and we were talking off camera about like having a system, having a process, and so he's like, "Okay, we got to find out what the value is." In real estate, it's called ARV, and we called it Blue Book. What's the Blue Book?
Sure.
Then we had to say, what's the repair cost going to be? Does it sound familiar? Then we had to say, what's a good enough discount that the buyer is going to need to buy a car that's got a salvage title? And so we would say, okay, you can pay 25% of AR, or you can pay 25% of after repair value, and you can put up to 25% in repairs in it because you want to sell it at a 25% discount.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So you learn how to flip basically assets at the age of 14.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Podcast is over.
Well, I remember this well. When I was 19, I bought a brand new Cadillac and paid cash for it because I had flipped these cars. And I'm like, I was looking back, that's such a douche move to do. Like a 19-year-old kid, I was not thinking. Well,
we never are at that age.
No. Well, my mom gets a call from the neighbor, and she's like, "Is Mike selling drugs?" And my mom asked me that. She's like, "Are you selling drugs?" I'm like, "Ma, you know how I made this money." And she's like, "Well, nobody in town does." I sold the car the next day, or listed it. It didn't sell the next day, but I sold it to a guy in Sioux City and got out of the car business.
That's so funny.
But I've always had a passion for cars. I've always loved sports, played all the sports. It's a small town,
Sure.
So we played everything. In the summer it was baseball. In high school it was basketball, football, track.
So tell me give them a shout out. What town was it that you grew up in? I mean, yeah.
So my whole family is from Hartington, Nebraska.
Okay.
And my dad, there's a big Catholic school. We're one of 10. And so the Catholic school is Cedar Catholic, and all my siblings went to Cedar. And then my dad owned a body shop in a neighboring town. And so they gave me my parents said, "You can go to Cedar if you want to. We'll help you," because we had to pay for it.
Sure.
But the public school in the town that my dad's body shop was in had a better football, better athletics, I thought. And it's true because we played in 4 years, we played in 3 state championships, and we won 1 state championship. So that was a great experience. I wouldn't trade for the world. It was a smaller school. It was 8-man football.
Oh, yeah.
But
Class C or D?
It was Class D. Yep. And great experiences, great memories. Gosh, I have so many friends and so many great memories from growing up. So it was wonderful.
Your car story really resonates with me because when I was growing up, I came from humble beginnings. So when I got to an age that I wanted a car, obviously my parents couldn't buy me a car. So my first job was working at McDonald's. And I shared this story a couple of weeks ago.
In Fremont.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago. Who was I was at, it was like a get together. I think I was sharing it with Stephanie actually. And I said, I was an athlete, I played soccer because at that age I was, I think 13 or 14, I had to get permission from my parents to actually work a couple of hours. I think it was limited.
Yeah.
But,
was that by law or was that parental law?
No, it was by law.
Okay.
I had to get them signed off. But I wanted a car. That's why I told them I started working. And I wanted a car because I knew that was coming up. And I remember on a Friday night, because I was younger in high school for my age. I was always like I should have been.
You turned 16 later than your classmates.
Yeah.
Same for me.
Because I'm from Chicago, so when I got to Nebraska, they should have started me at a lower grade, but I went above, and I always felt I was behind. But again, I wanted a car. I was working at McDonald's. One Friday night, I see all these varsity girls, soccer players, come to McDonald's, ordering nice cars and everything like that, good-looking ladies, and they're like, "Carlos, why are you working?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm working because I want to buy a car." And they're like, "Well, can't your parents just buy you a car?" Man,
I wish.
I said, "I wish," you know. And I started working at McDonald's, saving money, and going to the salvage yards and looking at cars, and I got myself a couple of cars, and I would buy one like you, me and my friend at the time. His dad was an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And they were always selling things. I'm like, I like this because my uncles were entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And that's where the itch came from.
And you see them handing cash to each other, and you're like, how do I get some of that?
Yeah, so they would take me to auctions and all this, and I'm like, I'm hanging out with, I'm hanging out with Marvin. His dad would teach me how to do all this stuff. And we learned how to fix cars and do all that. And finally, we would flip cars just like you were.
That's amazing.
Not to that level, obviously, but like we would buy them, flip them, get better cars. And next thing I know, I was 15 and I had a decent, okay car.
No driver's license.
No driver's license. I drove a whole year without one.
Oh, that's great.
And
I'm not going to park this thing after all that work. I'm driving this thing.
I'm a rebel.
Let's go. Let's go.
I couldn't even get a parking permit at high school.
Because you weren't old enough to drive.
Because I wasn't old enough to drive.
So where'd you park? On the street in the neighborhood?
Yeah. So, but
But when you got out of school, you're like, I'm parked over here. Let's go.
Yeah. So that story of cars really resonates with me. And then I'm like, I'm gonna go to that's the whole thing. I'm like, I'm tired of having dirt in my nails because I literally we did that. My brother was my brother's a mechanic by trade, but he loved that stuff as well. I just liked it because I wanted a car, but like. And my other friend, they like cars, but I liked them, not working on them. I just liked the idea of I wanted a car. Yeah, I wanted a car. I really did. I wasn't saying that I had a passion to working on them because I never did. It was more wanting the product.
Dude, this will resonate with you because the desire for a car for me was so deep. Like I was buying and selling these cars, and I would watch like my baby go away. I put all this work in it. I don't even own a car. I'm a kid, and I want to own a car. So my dad and I bought a car that we restored together. It was a 69 Mustang. And I remember the first day I got my driver's license, leaving the courthouse, I had my mom go with me to, she followed me in the car. I told her, you're not going to ride with me. Mm-hmm. But I said, I want you to go in case I get pulled over. We get done with the test. I pass the test. I say, you can go. I felt the most freedom I've ever felt in my life. Behind the wheel of that car, knowing it was my car, knowing that I had built it, and then I could go anywhere I want with this thing.
Right.
It was amazing. And I still remember that story. It's not at all what we're here to talk about, but you just reminded me of a childhood memory I'm really fond of.
But I think that's where it starts, Michael.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think a lot of that's where it starts. Let's jump into a little bit of these questions where I want to know. So obviously there's a part in your life, we talked a little bit about the great stuff about your life, right? Great childhood and everything, but there is a piece where you did encounter some financial hardship, and now you reach, success in real estate. What got you into real estate, and what ignited the passion for that?
Yeah. So my entry into real estate is a little bit different than I think most, where the businesses. So I have, to give you a little bit of perspective, I'm a what others might call a serial entrepreneur. So I have either bought, built, or sold and sold 7 businesses in my life.
Oh wow!
Not all were successful exits.
Sure.
But the very first and most successful business that I had was a franchise. And it was after my dad had passed. I had intended to take over the family business and work in the shop. But when he got sick and eventually passed, I didn't feel like I could run a business when I was a kid. So I ended up starting a franchise because the idea is be in business for yourself, not by yourself. Dude, franchising is, we were talking earlier about you didn't have a process.
Yeah.
When you buy a franchise, they give you literally a book. Now it's probably online, but they give you a book.
Modules and everything.
Yeah,
like
and it's literally, here's how you market, here's how you sell, here's how you run your operation, here's how you do accounting, here's your customer service, here's what you want to do for research and innovation. And it just lays it all out. I took that book, and I say that, I'm going to say it like I swallowed it. But you know when you catch a fish, hook, line, and sinker, like it's deep?
Yeah.
That's where that book went for me. In the first year, this was a franchise that was home repair and remodeling. It's now called Ace Handyman, if you guys have seen the trucks around. I know that the Turner, the gentleman that owns it now, is a great guy, by the way.
Yeah.
Shout out to Turner for if you need handyman work. But that was the first business, and I in the first year, I went from no revenue to, out of 150 franchisees, I was the fastest growing franchise. Years 2 and 3, I was the number 1 in sales. And these are operations in Chicago, Los Angeles, Dallas, in Omaha, Nebraska.
Wow.
We're the number 1 franchise. What it taught me, Carlos, is that I don't need to know a lot, but I need to have a process. I need to have a system. And so that's been an imprint on me that I took applied into every business since then. And frankly, I did not want to get into real estate. I didn't want to be a landlord. And I'm saying that to be, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek now because we have 400 rentals and I'm a landlord.
Yeah.
But I never set out to do that. I never viewed real estate as a vehicle. Both my parents were entrepreneurs, but they were service businesses. My dad had a body shop. My mom basically had a full-time garage sale. I mean, she had a store on Main Street. It was a secondhand store.
That's amazing, Michael.
Yeah, so it was I learned the service side, and I learned dealing with customers, and that's kind of where I felt like I was, training to go. But it wasn't. I'd started another construction company after they sold the franchise, which, by the way, let me give you a little bit of context on that. After the 3rd year, I had gone through some consulting and coaching, because not only did I want to have the systems and processes, but I wanted to have somebody who'd applied them before at a high level so I could copy it, if I'm being honest. Like, I didn't want to create anything. I just want to say, tell me how to do it, or tell me what to do and tell me how to do it. I'm going to just do it. And the coach at the end of that gave me a free, it was a certificate for a free business valuation. And he said, I want you to go and see what your business is worth. Because we had gone from nothing to, we had 30 employees, we had, a couple $1 million in revenue, and this would have been in 2007, 2008. And so I brought this certificate to a local business broker, and he said, okay, send me this information. I sent it to him. He calls me a few days later and said, I want you to come in and meet. We sit down at the desk just like you and I are, and he said, what do you think your business is worth? And I said, I have no idea. he said, well, just give me an idea. Tell me a number. So I threw out a number, and he said, I can sell your business for twice what you think it's worth. And I'm like, bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think I might have even said that.
Right.
But he pushed the contract across the desk and says, sign this. That day, without even talking to my wife, I listed our business for sale.
Wow.
90 days later, I walked out of the attorney's office, Abrams Caslow on the interstate off of Dodge, with a check that I had never, it was a big check, like a physically big check. And it wasn't seven figures, but it was close. That check completely changed my life. It lit a fire under me, Carlos, in a way that no other experience has up to that. Now, since there has been some other things, but up to that point. And I remember going from that meeting to the bank. We had our mortgage at First National. Wrote them a check. I think we owed $180,000 on our house. Paid it off.
I know that feeling.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And then I'm sitting here with this rest of the money, and I've got no business. I've got nothing else to do. So I ended up buying into a manufacturing company, exited that a couple years later, started a construction company. So now we're at 2016, and my wife and I, part of the construction company was that it was retail construction, so bath and kitchen remodeling primarily.
Sure.
And in Nebraska, homeowners during the holidays and in the winter don't want you in their house.
Yeah.
So basically from November till February, if you have a big crew, what are you going to do with these guys? So we'd buy some flip houses, and that was kind of our only dabbling into real estate, is just to keep the crews busy, because come busy season, I need those guys all hands on deck.
Right.
So we're working. It's actually 4th of July, 2016, and my wife and I get up in the morning and say, well, before we go have these festivities and go watch fireworks, let's go to the flip house and work on it. And it was a fateful day because we walk in, and the first thing she does is kick a can of paint over on a floor that had just been sanded, 100-year-old house. You know how it just soaking paint up into the floor, and we're both freaking out. And I said, okay, we got it all cleaned up. I'm like, I have to get something done in order for me to feel like this was worth the effort. So I go in the bathroom, and I'm going to put up one piece of trim. And if you can imagine the bathroom, you walk in, and to your right, there's the toilet, the vanity, and at the end is the tub.
Mm-hmm.
So the piece of trim I'm putting on, if you turn toward and face the toilet, it's on the wall that returns to the door. It's a plaster and lath wall. I put the first couple nails in, and the wall's got a bow to it, so I'm pushing on it. And the board, the face nailing through the face of the board, the nails were not long enough. There's too much plaster.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, the board's flexible enough. I'm going to push it in, and I'm going to toenail this board into the backboard that was stable. I hit it, nail ricochets, goes into my eye. Not like glancing blow, not like I got something in my eye. It was, I put my hand up, I feel a nail sticking out.
Unbelievable.
I remember, if this is too graphic, just tell me.
No, go ahead.
I remember putting my hand on my cheek, and I feel it's wet, and I look, I thought I was going to be bleeding, and it was clear. And I knew I had a problem because I knew that the fluid in my eye had just left. And so I walk out, I without realizing it, pulled the nail out. My wife's standing in the kitchen, and as I'm pulling the nail out, she sees, as she described it, everything turned red. And I'm in shock. I don't know what to do. I'm just kind of standing there. And she said, we got to go to the hospital. So we drive. By God's grace, that house is on 35th and Center, and UNMC is very close.
Mm-hmm.
We were there in a couple of minutes. Because it's the 4th of July, they thought I had a fireworks accident.
No.
And the guy that, as we pull up, the guy that I get out to meet looks at me, and he physically starts to shake. I'm like, well, this must be pretty bad. I'm not feeling any pain, by the way. So long story short, I go through multiple surgeries. Now I'm blind in one eye. I have had, what do they call it? An implant, or not an implant. What do they call it when somebody donates? A donor cornea?
Yeah.
So a transplant.
A transplant.
Yeah. And which, by the way, thank God for transplant people. I mean, that's a whole nother story. But all that to say, while I can't see, it was a period of time where I was incapacitated and couldn't work. And I had been such a hands-on guy, growing up in a body shop. I'm a licensed general contractor even to this day. I love tools. I love the trades. I'm actually decent at it. But I had a lot of time to think and realize I can't see. I don't know if you've ever dealt with no depth perception, but it's I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of other way worse things. But when it comes to doing fine details of work, it's impossible because you just can't see where things are at. I can see it, but I can't tell how far away it is. So, and little details too, which we're probably getting way too deep into this rabbit hole, but the hardest thing, honestly, about all that was I love to play catch with my boys. And I remember one of the first times we were playing catch and my son threw the baseball, hit me right in the mouth.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't track the ball.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, this sucks. So anyways, all of that to say, I literally had to come up with a new vision for our business. Literally, I was blind, and figuratively, I needed a new vision.
And you were still doing construction.
Doing construction. At that moment, my wife said, we need to start buying real estate. Because if you're not able to produce with your hands and run a construction company the way that we got to start having some passive income. Reluctantly, I agreed and quickly realized that if I applied the same franchise thinking, which is set it up as a business from day one, which I think, frankly, is a lot of, I'm hesitating to say mistakes, but you call it a mistake that people make investing, is they think they're buying a property. In reality, they're buying a business. If they're going to rent it. If they're going to live in it, then they're buying a property. But if they're going to rent it, they're buying a business. And the majority, frankly, of the properties we buy are from people who didn't think they were buying a business.
Yeah.
Like they thought, I'm just going to buy some properties and it's going to be great. Well, you're running a business.
Exactly.
So we applied that framework. We didn't hold a single rental in 2019. We have 400 today. Wow. The framework, do you want me to share with you what that is?
Go ahead.
Because I think it would be helpful for anybody that's listening to this to understand, if I had any advice to give somebody about investing in real estate, it would be treat it as a business. Because the peril of not thinking like a business owner will bite you in the butt.
Mm-hmm.
If you think like a business owner, the framework is the same in every business. Like I said, I bought and sold and built 7 businesses. The exact same framework applies to Coca-Cola that applies to Jack's Trenching. Shout out to Jack's Trenching, whoever that is. But it's the same business, the same framework, I'm sorry. And when I explain it to people, mostly just in our office for everyone to understand, I draw it out as a house. So if you can imagine a floor in the house is the leadership. The reason it's the floor is because the leader's intended to support, to make sure everyone's got what they need and remove barriers. That's my view of leadership. The left wall is marketing. In order for you to have any business, by the way, all businesses are marketing businesses.
Yes.
And if you have marketing, then that's the first wall on your left. The wall on the right is sales.
Mm-hmm.
The left roof panel is operations or fulfillment. Whatever it is you're doing, whatever you're going to deliver, the right roof panel is accounting, back office. The front door is customer service, and the window is research and development.
Wow.
If somebody draws that on a piece of paper and writes down what those things are, and then there's a simple exercise, and I've done this with every single business I've started. I ask myself, who is going to own that piece? Who's the leader? Who's the marketing? Who's sales, etc.? Then I say, how are they going to do things? What is it that they're going to do and how, right? The how really speaks to the standard, and that's what's the outcome that I want. So if, as a leader, who's the leader? What are they going to do and how are they going to do it? And then what will I see or how will it manifest? so that I can track it, I can measure it.
Yeah.
And if you do that for all 7 of those critical functions of the business will not only survive, but maybe thrive, depending upon your ability to attract and bring other people. Because the truth about that framework is that no one person can do all of those to the extent that the business deserves it. And especially as you grow, the business will demand it.
Mm-hmm.
And so being aware of that, I think, is something I'd hope to bring to your audience to say, hey, real estate's an amazing tool. However, if you don't think of it as an investment, if you don't think of it as a business, I think you're selling yourself short and you're setting yourself up for problems.
That's a beautiful way to illustrate that whole concept. I don't think I've had anybody to actually lay it out that way. That's amazing.
Well, by the way, do it with any business, Carlos.
Yeah.
Do it with your real estate business.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Your investing business.
Sure.
All businesses require the same framework.
I love that piece about the marketing. Many people think that the end result is the property.
No.
It's I always say, and I can't take credit for this, but this is one of the guys that I used to do the marketing fulfillment for my company. Whoever controls a lot of the leads and marketing, they control the industry.
They do. They do. I heard it said that you can have the very best product in the world and nobody knows about it, you'll go broke.
Mm-hmm.
You can have an average product, but if everybody knows about it, you're going to get wealthy.
Right.
Case in point, McDonald's. I don't know how many people absolutely think their product is the best on the planet, but I don't know how many people don't know about McDonald's.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And that's a
Yeah, so people like to walk out, with keys, from a title company saying, "Hey, I figured this out."
Well, what you just did is you just caught a tiger by the tail. And that thing's about to eat you.
Yep.
And then you're going to sell it to you or me after
Exactly.
you get exhausted because you don't realize you're running a business.
Yeah.
So, but if you do it, like what I just laid out there is not rocket science.
Mm-hmm.
It's not mysterious. It's just that we lose sight. The appeal, and it's one of the things I've heard, dozens of times from folks to say, I want to get into real estate. I want to get into real estate. I want to get into real estate. And I'm like, I want you to get into real estate. It's changed my family's life. To give you some perspective, we have enough passive income where my wife and I now have 180 days a year scheduled free days. We just got back from 30 days in Mexico. So it has the power to do that, no question. The question isn't, can it do it, does it work? The answer is yes. The question is, how are you going to run it? Because if you don't run it well, it will run you. Because the capitalism, the business is merciless.
Yeah.
It cuts both ways. You market well, you'll have all the customers you want. You don't market, you're going to zero.
Exactly.
You don't have a good sales process, your customers are not going to come back.
Absolutely.
So, again, it's not, I don't want to belabor that point, but I think that's really foundational. So when we entered real estate, it was by accident, but we applied that framework and those tools, and everything's a system.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is a process. We're writing our own playbooks. And now we've got a huge team. There's like 12 full-time people, and I think we were talking the other day, there's like 40 that help us. And now we can go out. That's, to your earlier intro, that's kind of the reason we can now go out and have other people invest alongside us and still get the same benefits of ownership, but not have to do it alone. It's the same thing when I started in business for yourself, but not by yourself.
Yeah. So I know you obviously you shared a little bit about your challenges that you encountered. It seemed like everything was good, and then you encountered some adversity. But what do you think it was the pivotal moment that caused your trajectory to success today? What was it? What was the moment that you're like? It turned on.
I had the story immediately in my head when you asked that question. 3 years ago, we purchased a 90-unit building. So almost 3 years into our journey. And we were, by God's grace, able to do it without investors. So it was family money. We originally, and by the way, I was scared to death of this deal. Like, we had done 100 or so single family and small multis. I felt like, the construction side I had like the back of my hand, the operations side with the back office, Lucy's the CFO, like she's a genius when it comes to numbers. we had our property management. So all that was working. To take this big bite scared me, because my thinking was, I don't want to plug up this machine, because if I do, the visual, and this is a little crude, it's like the python through the pig, or the pig through the python, right? So you're like, if I eat this pig, I'm not going to be able to eat anything. And what if I have all these little mice I want to eat?
Exactly.
So it felt
how am I going to digest that?
Exactly. Yeah.
That would.
Yeah. So in our business, a lot of times we say, you commit first, and then you act in courage. Okay. And I'm saying that to hear it, because I need courage, because most of what we're doing, I'm scared to death of.
I understand.
But that's where God is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he said to Peter, "Get out of the boat." You know, he didn't say stay in the boat. I'm going to calm the storm. However, this was a scary moment. So we bought this 90-unit property. We had the plan. We paid just shy of $4 million. Just call it $4 million. And we had the plan. It was poorly managed. It was built late 90s, so it wasn't an old building, but they had never done any maintenance to speak of. I mean, that's not true. They did some maintenance, but it was a lot of deferred maintenance, to the extent of, like, I need to put a roof on the building.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, you should have had a claim and didn't, that kind of a thing. Excuse me. But the plan was laid out, and because it was apartments, basically what I did is I went and I laid out every floor plan,
Mm-hmm.
and I got all the materials, all the quantities of everything per layout,
Mm-hmm.
and I just, you know, put it on a rinse and repeat cycle for about 2.5 years. I would say I think it was January, because we started the process of refinancing in September. We just closed earlier this year. The property appraised at $8 million. We put in less than $2 million. So we bought it for $4 million, put in less than $2 million, about $1.8 million. It appraised at $8 million. This is family money.
Congratulations.
That's
a big deal.
Thank you. It's one person as the lead, which is the servant of everyone else, and a team of people that make that happen. That is not something that any individual, I don't care how smart we are, I don't care how many systems we have, we need a team to do that.
Yeah.
And all the credit goes to the team that did it. At the same time, the feeling of gratification and reward, and frankly, the realization of what that does for our family, it's transformational. We own an asset now with no money in it. That still cash flows. The debt service coverage is 1.3. So it still cash flows. And we did it in less than 3 years. That's when I said to myself, and another example I'll share in just a second about my son on a smaller scale, but that was the example that cemented the idea that this needs to be accessible to more good people, like my dad, who was a great businessman but died broke because he didn't have a plan. If he wasn't working, he wasn't making money.
Mm-hmm.
Had no passive income. And I think that needs to be available. Real estate shouldn't be that hard. The larger stuff is much more of a team effort.
Yeah.
I can't take down big buildings by myself like this. Like we have a 107-unit contract, or 107-unit under contract. That's investor money. I don't have the resources to do it. The blessing in that is when people, know, like, and trust you, and you have a system in place, they can come along for the ride and get all the benefits. And that's really what's got me excited.
Yeah, that's a great acquisition, and then repositioning of the asset. I think the biggest thing there is that you did it all with all your family money.
Exactly.
You can go out there, be a syndicator and syndicate all this and bring all these people, but that right there is a game changer.
Well, and we had to leverage the equity in our other in our portfolio to get the cash. I didn't have $2 million sitting around to go put into this property. We had equity in our portfolio, and I didn't want to cash it all out because rates were starting to go up.
Yeah.
But we were able to get a line of credit and fund that, and that's all been cleaned up and paid off. And so it's an amazing experience when it works.
Yeah, when it works.
Yeah. The thing is that, I mean, that's the success story that everyone's going to point to and say, yeah, anybody can do it. And it's true, they can.
Yeah.
It's like the guy that wins the lottery, promoting lottery tickets. But the reality is it's not the lottery if you have a team. If you have a bunch of great people that all know what they're doing and they're all working towards a common goal, and you treat it like a business.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key.
Yeah. So, Michael, I know you recently had a really big collaboration with Chris Voss, on your book, Empathetic Leadership. And for our listeners who are not, don't know Chris Voss, he's used to be the lead negotiator, hostage negotiator for the FBI, and the mastermind behind the classic book, Never Split the Difference.
Yep.
How was that partnership? How did that develop? That's remarkable. Like that's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, it's what's funny, and let's not kid ourselves. Chris Voss is what the book's about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's the hero of the story. I'm just a guy that shares a couple of little stories of how it works. But Chris deserves all the credit. Like, I'm just grateful to have hung onto his coattails and to be able to grab a hold of him.
But Michael, you got to give yourself some credit. You still were part of that group.
Well, and thank you for that. I do appreciate that.
I know you. I know when we first started, you're like, it's not about the book. We're having a conversation about the book, but that's still, regardless of it, there was something that somebody saw within your story, within your skill set, within you, that made him bring you in and saying, I want you to be a part of this. Chris Voss, the guy, the master negotiator, that's a big deal.
It is.
And to be selected, to be part of that, give yourself a little bit more credit than that, Michael. That's a big deal.
I'm not a natural, look at me person.
I know you're not.
I'm much more of a put my head down and do things. I'd rather, if you're a car guy, I'm a rat rod, I'll race you for pinks.
Yeah.
My car looks like a POS, but I'm going to own your car at the end of this race. That's my style. I'm much more of a doer. So really the way that all got started was I as soon as I got the content from Chris, the Never Split the Difference, it was like light bulb. I completely rewrote our script on how we do everything from marketing to sales. Chris Voss is in the tactical empathy is woven through every part of our business. It's the common thread that every one of those 7 core areas has woven through it. So it's the how superpower, not the what, but the how we go about it. And the way that came about was I've just, again, a consumer of his content. I'm listening. He's on YouTube, podcast. Anytime I see Chris Voss, I'm clicking on it because it was so unnatural for me to start. And I like the word picture of, I'm not a pianist, so no disrespect to anybody that knows how to play piano. The way I imagine it is when you start playing, it doesn't sound that good.
Yeah.
You're missing some things.
Yeah.
And that's how it felt when I was starting to use mirrors or labeling or accusations audits. It felt like this isn't, it felt disingenuous.
Yeah.
But I kept playing it, and I kept playing. And then all of a sudden I would hit a chord, that was music.
Yeah.
And the result of that wasn't I have this amazing experience. It was more of the person I'm speaking with is having an amazing experience. That's when the light bulb went on. It's this stuff is not for me. It's for them. And if I can serve people better by providing them this empathy, then the collaboration can start. In our company, we've decided to call it the thin place. It's the place where we have taken. Let's pretend like this is the deal. Whatever it is we want, the property, the contract, the girl, whatever it is. Let's pretend this is it. A lot of times in a negotiation, we're saying, this is what I want, and you say, no, this is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
What tactical empathy and Never Split the Difference taught me is that if we can take this and move it over here, and you and I can move, then slide around to the same side of the table and look at it from the same perspective, there's what's called a third mind that appears. Instead of your mind and my mind, we now have a collective mind working on that. And the power that comes from that thin place where you're truly working to solve a problem together will absolutely change somebody's life. It changed my marriage. It changed my kids' relationships. Like my greatest regret is not being married to my children's mom. I don't want to be married to her. Like I want to be careful. I know my kids are going to be listening to this at some point in my family. I think my kid's mother is an amazing mother. She's an amazing human. She just wasn't a good fit for me. So my kids deserve to have their parents together. And I didn't give them that. And that's my biggest regret. Looking back, it had largely to do with this. I'm keeping this between us. I didn't know how to navigate these conversations.
Wow.
I love my parents to death. They're amazing human beings. My mom's 92. Like, she is my favorite person on the planet. If my dad was alive, he was a World War II vet, okay? So I was raised by a different generation. We didn't talk like this. We didn't collaborate. We didn't empathize. We did stuff, you know? The connection was shoulder to shoulder, man. Let's go get some work done.
Yeah.
And I love that to this day. However, in the relationships that matter most, my wife, my kids, that tactical empathy is, when you put the word tactical in front of it, it sounds utilitarian.
It does.
It sounds like, I don't want it to be used against somebody. Yeah. It is, it couldn't be further from the truth. When it comes from a place of genuine curiosity and sincerity and, like, I want a good relationship, the results are amazing because you get to that thin place and you start solving problems together. And it transforms lives. It's amazing.
Wow, Michael. I know today was going to be good, but I didn't think it was going to be this good. This is awesome.
Oh, sweetheart. Come on.
No, this is awesome. Because so basically what you just outlined is and labeled, if you will, is a behavior that really, I think, once you get there, that is, using your language, the unfair advantage.
Yeah.
That is the unfair advantage when what we do in the negotiations. And to get to that point, because a lot of people probably ask you, just like they ask me, just like they ask a lot of people that are great negotiators, what is that?
Yeah.
But what you just labeled, which is, the empathetic, the tactical empathy, that's what it is. And nobody understands it until you do exercises.
Dude.
And once you
seriously, you're giving me goosebumps.
But that's what it is. I never knew that. I never was able to label something like that into what you just described, because what people say, hey, what makes you so good, Carlos? How do you get these, amazing deals? But it's that behavior, because you do remove that and you put it to the side. And when people really understand where you're coming from and are legitimately, genuinely trying to help them, then they put that aside. It's not between me and you.
It isn't. And we're starting to cook with oil.
I know we are.
Or with gas. I don't know.
With something.
Yeah. Anyways, so what I like to say, and I think this is a borrowed phrase, and I don't know if it's from Chris or not, is that don't be so sure of what you want that you wouldn't accept something better. And so when you go into this negotiation and this is between us, I'm going into it I'm wed to an idea, an outcome.
Yes.
And you're being met, the energy that I'm bringing you is I want what I want, even though I'm not saying it, because that's what's in my heart. That's the energy I'm putting out. And you resist it. You don't want to go to the thin place and collaborate, right? Because that's just I want what I want, you want what you want. Getting it to be over here and saying, I'm not wed to that. I don't need to buy this. I don't need this deal. I don't need this relationship. I want to understand. I want it. And I want to understand what you're looking for. And I want to understand if what I can do for you will help you get what you want. I know this is going to start to sound really like fuzzy. But the reality is you have to find a way to say to yourself, I don't care what the outcome is. I care about you.
Yep. I know what you mean. You're talking my language. I know exactly, because those exercises is literally the process that I'm sure we mutually utilize,
Well, how do you do that when you're new in the business, when you're just starting out, when you got to buy groceries, you hate your job, you don't want to, like your mom said, don't do it, and now you got to prove to her that she's wrong. This is really hard. Like,
extremely hard.
dude, what we focus on gets bigger. And if the deal is like, I need a deal, set it aside.
Yep.
As soon as you can let go of it and focus on the other person, you're going to have more deals. You know that.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have more deals than you know what to do with.
Absolutely.
We'll talk off camera about all the stuff in our pipeline that we're working on as far as deal flow in a market where nobody's getting deals.
Mm-hmm.
That is that thread. I'm going to call it the golden thread that's woven through everything we do. And so to answer your question directly, I got an email that said, hey, we represent Chris. He's writing a book. He's looking for entrepreneurs to collaborate with. Would you be willing to submit a story? I'm like, I'm going to write it right now.
Yeah.
It took me an hour to dump out this idea, and I sent it off, and they said, well, there's, it's going to be reviewed by these people, and if they like your story, they'll select it. And so, I don't know how that all worked in the back end, except to know that I got another email to say, hey, we like your story. We want to edit it. We want to help you write it better. So they gave me a ghostwriter and an editor.
That's awesome.
To help me. And then we were put in the book. So, and I'm honored because it's like how the tools that Chris taught me, and I got to take a step back. We talked earlier about how there's nothing new, and I see truth like just rotating around. And sometimes we see the truth and we like, oh, I need to grab, and then it goes here and we lose sight of it. And then another opportunity comes. Oh, here's the truth again. Okay, I missed it.
Yep.
Right when I read that book, I need to hear that truth. And I grabbed it, and I swallowed it. I guess that's a bad analogy, but it goes to your heart.
Yeah.
And I start to apply it. It completely transformed me, and I'm like, I have to give back to Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Chris needs me. I'm going. You know what I mean? That was
Absolutely.
the kind of feeling.
Oh yeah.
The fact that it's done what it's done and has been, got a lot of notoriety. It's been cool, but it's that's all Chris Voss, dude. You know that.
Yeah.
I'm just a guy that took what he's taught and applied it in a way that has meant really a lot to me and my family, and I want to help other people.
I'm going to press a little bit more on that. So obviously we know that Chris Voss is a master negotiator, right? Meeting with him, and doing, some things with his team along with some. I'm sure you got to spend some time with him. How has he influenced the way you approach leadership? Leadership as in general in your business and in your personal life, because I'm sure once you really consume it, because the leadership, well, people don't believe, and I'm not there yet. I'm working towards it. I'm a work in progress. That's the skill that really moves the needle, I believe.
I 100% agree. I think the greatest deficit the world has is leadership, and I would add the word authentic.
Yes.
Which is sort of becoming a buzzword.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to marketing. And it's a little disappointing that we have to say be authentic. But I guess that's where we're at. So the authentic leadership piece is the greatest void I think we have. When you meet Chris Voss, he could sit right here. There is no pretense. There's no pomp and circumstance. I met him one time, spent one evening with him, with he and his girlfriend and my wife and some of the other folks with the book. He didn't want to leave. He was willing to sit and talk.
That's amazing.
And I think he's kind of a big deal. And he could easily say, I have things to do.
Right.
But we got to dinner at 7. I don't think he left until midnight. Wow. We lost track of time, put it that way.
In that kind of environment?
He owes us nothing.
Right.
He knows that book is a bestseller because of him, not me. So he just lives it. And I think that to use the overused term authenticity, which is really just being honest with yourself, right? And delivering who you are. Mm-hmm. And let it land how it lands.
Yeah.
And if it resonates with somebody, come on. Let's go.
Yeah.
If it doesn't resonate, that's okay. You're not my people. It's all right. Like, you got other people.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
We're not going to be all things to all people. And I think that's where Chris is really nailing it, is like he models, and talking to him, he freaking mirrors and labels, dude. It's like, it's the most respectful way to communicate, to defer. Like,
sure.
if you think about that, I don't remember where I read this, Carlos, but the most respectful you can ever be to somebody is to defer. And deference is how would that be seen? What's your advice? That's the most deferential thing you can say to somebody. What would you recommend?
Yeah.
On the other end of the spectrum, the most disrespectful thing is ignoring. Don't even acknowledge the person. The most disrespectful thing you can do. Somebody walks in the room and you don't even acknowledge who they are. Yeah. Ignore them completely. How do you get on this end of the spectrum and stay there more often? We're not going to. We're playing that piano. And I promise you, I miss so many chords. Where I play them the best is in my head when I'm like practicing.
Yeah.
I'm like, dun, 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 man, I'm nailing this song. This is great.
Yeah.
And then I meet somebody and it's like, bah, bah.
Yep. That didn't come out like I planned.
Oh, no, it didn't. I got to go back and practice.
Yeah.
But I don't forget the chords.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful part about what he's taught us, and continues to model just a very sincere, genuine. I've known him for 4 hours face to face. I could call him a friend. He probably wouldn't. He probably didn't even know who I am anymore.
But people can mask the reality, right? Their genuine, reality, right? If you're a genuine person that truly, really stands behind principles and standards, eventually, the reality will come out. If you are really genuine, or
100%, dude. Like,
you can mask it all you want.
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
Doesn't work. And by the way, I think part of the challenge, and this is going to maybe be too far into the faith thing, but it's who I am. Part of the challenge is folks don't allow themselves to say, I'm good the way I am. Like, to aspire is amazing, right? To say, I want something better is amazing. I would just ask that as you think about that, to say, amazing compared to what? Compared to Carlos? Compared to Chris Voss? Or compared to what's possible? What did God make me to do? What am I uniquely gifted in? Because if we can be true to that, now I'm inspired by you, and there's things that you're doing that I say, I want to borrow that. There's nothing wrong with that. I just don't want to say, I want to be Carlos, right? And that's where I think the true authenticity comes, is just knowing who made you, knowing that you have value, and knowing that value is here. You're alive for a reason. Like, there's a lot of wasted sperm, but you're here. And because you're here, you have something to bring.
And it's unbelievable because obviously with your story, you got a second chance, right?
Right.
I think a lot of the greats get those second chances.
If we look at them and say, what did I learn and how do I move forward?
Yeah. Yeah. In the book, there's a discussion that says breaking the cycle of poverty through empathy. How can empathy be a powerful tool to creating social change and economic empowerment?
Oh man, I think we've already touched on it, right? It's the be true to you, be honest with yourself, be honest with others, trust that is the currency that trades well. You're going to be a better dad. You're going to be a better husband, wife, mom, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, a better human being. And how to say, like the striving that we all feel can be exhausting. And I got to be careful because the striving isn't, what is it, Carlos? What is it? It's not striving to be the best version of you. It's striving to satisfy somebody else. That's what it is. Like strive to what's your true north and what are you about? And it's striving to deliver the best version of that.
Right.
Versus I got to satisfy my mom. Which, by the way, moms love us and they want us to do good. And my mom is 92 and she still tells me what to do. That's okay. I know it's coming from a place of love.
Yeah.
That doesn't drive me. No disrespect, Ma. I love you. But what drives me is, how did God make me? And I think in her heart of hearts, that's what she wants, is for his fingerprint that as I come into her world as a total surprise, 10 years after she's had babies, right? Think what was in her head. Like, crap, I'm 50 and I'm having a kid. She was excited.
It's on. You tell me some of those stories, and I apply them to my life, and it's interesting how there's common things there, and it makes me believe, like, when things happen for a certain reason, the timing. I always say, not to get too spiritual, but the timing of God, how He does things, and how He does them by design for a specific purpose.
100%.
It's really unbelievable. I'm sure the gap between your sister and you and all that had an impact, down the road as you were growing up and all that. The same thing with what happened to you as you were, exited a company, started another one, the trajectory, but then He brought you back.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because of that,
Mm-hmm.
It keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
It give you a second chance. You thought you were probably going to be blind for the rest of your life. And look, here you go, somebody that was willing to donate, this, and look at you now.
Yeah, pretty handsome.
Absolutely. This is probably going to go viral, man. Watch out to your wife's going to have to watch out, man.
Yeah, right. You're safe, honey. Trust me.
So let me touch a little bit on this. There's a lot of things that you have going on, right? Multiple businesses that you're running. How do you balance, your family life now? Because I think you've learned some lessons,
Yeah.
From before to now.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance that life and still can excel, with your businesses and your personal life,
Mm-hmm.
and your marriage and relationship with your family?
Yeah, it's really an interesting dynamic that we have, because our business involves so much of our family. Of my 4 kids, 3 work full-time in the business. And so we're doing deals and solving problems in the business and, spending time as a family together. So I think one of the downsides to that, honestly, is that we talk a lot about business.
Yeah.
And on one hand, it's enjoyable. On the other hand, it can be like, let's just be a family.
You can't disconnect.
Yeah. So there is some challenge there, but I think we do actually a pretty good job of it. And I'm hesitating a little bit because I want to hear from my kids.
Yeah.
They'll tell me if we're doing okay. Because truthfully, I have an unlimited passion for business. It's what God put me on the earth to do. I just happen to find a business that creates wealth in a way that I never, it's always been kind of in me to say, I want to fix what my dad did wrong, leaving my mom broke. And I thought it'd be through service businesses or other things. But now with this real estate being the case, it's like, wow, to your point, better than ever.
Yeah.
Like this setback was not, it didn't happen to me, it happened for me. And I think about that with my kids and what they can build. It's humbling. Can I give you a quick story about Luke, my son?
Go ahead.
Luke is now 22, and he was in college at 19 and came to me and said, hey, I'm not vibing with college. I'd like to get out, and I want to do something else. And so that was a tough conversation because actually I share this story in the book about how difficult that was for me as a dad to say, hey, I want for you to finish school because I know that can help you.
Yes.
I believe in education. I believe in, and it's not just for, getting the recipe to success there, but it's the network you build and the promises and commitments you keep to yourself to do hard things.
Yeah.
Don't give up on yourself. That was basically what I was fighting internally. And because of tactical empathy and the tools that Chris has taught us, we were able to navigate that really difficult conversation. And he ended up coming to work with us. He was 19 at the time, and I was, part of me, like, he could tell this story maybe differently, but part of me, part of my motivation for him to come was, like, I want him to do some stuff that he doesn't want to do.
Yeah.
Like, maybe he'll go back to school.
Yeah.
So he's doing, like, demo, trash outs, driving for dollars, all this stuff.
I remember that.
Oh, it's terrible work.
I remember that because that was like in 18, 19?
19, yeah.
Yeah, I remember because when I used to send you opportunities, he used to go do the
walkthroughs.
The walkthroughs for you.
Yeah. So, anyways, I had him do, and just like you, he's hard-headed and persevered and pushed through it. Well, he sees, like he's had the peek behind the curtain, right? He sees everything that we do. He sees all the numbers. He sees everything, and part of it is because he does all of our acquisitions. So he does all the underwriting and understands if the business plan works, it's gonna be a good deal or not. So he started to invest his money, and he started to invest into deals, and he leveraged the team that we have. Luke is and has stayed in the lane of acquisitions. He doesn't do repair estimates. He doesn't do scopes of work. He doesn't do repairs. He doesn't manage the job. Doesn't manage the tenants. There's a lot he doesn't do. Mm-hmm. The team does it. But because we've got the team and because we've got the processes in place, in 4 years, 19, 20, he'll be 23 this year. In 4 years, he's now earning $120,000 a year in passive income.
Wow.
He doesn't have any college debt.
That's what I'm saying. I say that because he went from a kid going to college saying, I'm going to go learn this.
Listen to this.
Because he's going to be 23 years old, right?
He is. Yeah, in like a couple months.
Just imagine that.
It's nuts.
Unbelievable.
The gift that kid has experienced because of this team and the systems, and like treating it like a business,
mm-hmm.
he's leveraged it to the full extent. And if he was here, he'd give the team all the credit because they do deserve it. He's the tip of the spear and has done a lot of stuff. The majority of the work he didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
It's been mostly passive. So now he'll be 23 and has this income, no school debt. I'm listening to him. The majority of our business now comes from brokers because we're buying larger assets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to him teach the brokers how to underwrite a multifamily deal. He's 22. The kid, he swallowed it.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm going to trust this process.
I wonder where he learned that.
Well, yeah, I'm guessing that I set a pretty good example in that regard. But the reward in that is not that I taught him that, but in that the result works. The system works, and the result happened.
Yeah.
Because he trusted it enough to swallow it. And so what does that mean for our family? Well, how does that change Luke's opportunities in life?
Oh, wow.
Like if you had $120K in passive income, how would that change your life?
At his age?
At any age. Pick the age. He started 4 years ago. It's an incredible thing to see the power of the systems, the power of the people, the power of the team. And I think about his kids. I think about his grandkids. Yeah. I mean, what I set out to do when Dad died and my mom came to me, said, I don't have $600. I promised myself that day that no one in my family would ever feel the pain of poverty if I had anything to do with it. And if I stop right now, Carlos, if God takes me home, strikes me down in this studio, I can say mission accomplished. And there's no, the pride in that is quickly offset with gratitude, quickly offset with humility, because it is a team. It is by God's grace. It is, his provision. And I acknowledge, and he owns it all, and we treat it that way. We're stewards. But to answer the question directly, how would your family feel if you were able to do that with them?
Yeah.
And how that would change how they look at things.
Mm-hmm.
I tell Myra, and she just has a 1-year-old, I'm doing a lot of what I do for Gio. He has no idea. This kid has no idea. Now, he's going to do all the hard things because I want him to learn for himself who he is, if she'll allow it, right? That's up to her as the mom. But the vehicle's going to be there. And when his kid comes along and he wants to teach Jorge or whoever he names his kid after his dad, then he'll have the systems and the team and the process in place. And he gets to decide if he wants to tap into it.
I know when we first started, we were first cooking, you talked about doing hard things and how that's really what shapes, generational wealth. People say that, oh, I want to create generational wealth. It's good to create it. I get it. How do you sustain it?
God, I love that question.
And that's the thing.
It's my biggest fear. There's a proverb, or I don't know what an ism, that says your shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Have you heard this?
Mm-hmm.
I learned that I was listening to somebody on a podcast, and they said, well, that ism is true across the world. Like supposedly in China, they say rice paddy to rice paddy in 3 generations. So it's a human thing, right? So we have this tendency as humans, and I think Joe Rogan said it, I'm going to mess this up, but hard times make strong men make easy times make weak men, weak men make hard times. That's that cycle.
Yes.
And those aren't his words, but that's basically the premise of it, to say within a short period of time, we're going to go from working our butts off and creating something that will be enjoyed and appreciated by the next generation, so much so that their kids won't have to do anything. And then that generation is going to screw it up and then back to square one.
Forgotten by the 3rd generation.
So what we're doing is we're planning 100 years from now. So that it's just a paradigm shift.
It really is.
We're saying, what is the 4th generation? We don't even know them yet. We're planning for 100 years from now. When you start thinking that way, it's just like we were talking earlier. Like you have to, and we didn't use this terminology, but it has to be created first in your mind, right? You have to see it, or you have to believe it to see it, not see it to believe it. And if you believe it and you commit to it, guess what happens? The odds of it coming true, it's pretty high.
That's pretty much everything you've done thus far.
Think about this building we're in. Somebody thought about this at one point in their head, drew it on a piece of paper, so it's created once, and then somebody came and actually put it together. It's created twice, or maybe 3 times. Head, paper, reality. I don't know, but that's how we think about the enduring, lasting effects of this, with the caveat of they have to do hard things.
So you have Luke. Tell me your kids.
4 kids: Paul, Luke, Mary Ellen, Elaine.
And Luke is the oldest?
He's the oldest boy.
Oldest boy.
Yep, he's got 2 older sisters.
Gotcha. So. I talked to him the other day, and he loves the underwriting. He loves the acquisition.
He does.
I was telling him about you jumping up on the show, and he's like, yeah, he can do all that. He's like, I'm like, aren't you a little bit, excited about your dad? No, I was talking about the book. He's like, yeah, he can do all that. He can do all that. I'm like, Luke, you just want the deals, and you just want to He's like, yep, pretty much. Yeah. And I was like, all right, man.
Yeah.
He loves that. He loves that.
He is.
Let's go this direction. I know for inspiring entrepreneurs and real estate investors, facing tough times is always a challenge. Facing adversity. What advice would you give them that you would help people that are going either currently or going through some adversity, some challenges, based on your experience, to overcome them and come come on the other side?
So I think adversity it's kind of built into life, right? And everybody has hard things happen. And so, and I like the way Jim Rohn says it. He says, don't ask for life to be easier. Ask how you can be better. And so that's really the question that it's a framing of it, right? So, or I don't remember who said this. Maybe it was who's the guy who's the Max Out podcast?
Oh, Ed Millett.
Yeah.
I love that guy.
I think he said life happens for us, not to us.
Yeah.
Maybe
He took that from Tony Robbins.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. So again, nothing new.
Yeah.
But that perspective, I think, is everything, because then it allows you to frame up what's happening. And I think it's unhealthy to say, oh, this bad thing happened, I'm just going to sugarcoat it and pretend like it's all good. I think as humans, we have to allow ourselves to experience that hurt, and we have to allow ourselves to feel like that uncomfortable feeling that none of us want. I think we have to allow that, because I think if we then, this is the key, synthesize that or transform that into an action that we can be better for that experience is for us. If that same thing happens and we get angry and upset and bent out of shape and stay there or complain to others about it, it's going to start to eat us alive from the inside out, and it's going to start to infect other people around us. As Zig Ziglar would call it, stinking thinking.
Yeah.
He'd say, you need to check up from the neck up, which I love. By the way, that's one of my favorite books, is See at the Top, Zig Ziglar.
I love that example you just said. How'd you say it? You consume it, and then you're basically saying
There's a choice.
Yeah.
And it's either synthesizing.
Synthesize, yeah.
Which is this, like, distilling down. What is it? What's the essence of what this
Yes.
is about for me? And then once you understand it, transform it. And you do it by asking questions.
Yep.
The brain's a computer.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't read Psycho-Cybernetics, shocking about how the brain works. A quick example is the guy that wrote the book. I can't tell you his name. Psycho-Cybernetics. It'll probably come to me when I leave. But he was a plastic surgeon, and he was studying how shaving a millimeter off somebody's nose would absolutely change their personality. Nobody could perceive a difference except the individual, but because they felt that millimeter was shaved, they were a completely different person. So he did a study, and he had a hypnotist on a stage, and the hypnotist had hypnotized somebody, and through their prompting told them, hey, my fingers are red hot poker. Imagine this red hot poker. Stay away from it. Don't let it get close to you. And the person was like freaking out. They accidentally touched their arm. You know what happened? Their arm got a blister. The power of the brain is what that is all about. Like the power of the stuff you feed your brain. And I don't want to get too, like, I'm not that, I don't understand it. I'm a student of it, and I'm practicing it, sort of like practicing, the tactical empathy.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm practicing trying to feed my brain things that can turn into useful information instead of staying upset.
Well, I think you did it. You did such a great job there when you were saying about reframing the situation. Mm-hmm. That's what it really was, right? It's how do you take a bad situation, reframe it, and then leverage it and get a result from that. Basically, learning the lesson. Once the lesson is learned, leverage it and get a result from it.
Yeah.
But that whole process that I just outlined, it's very difficult because not a lot of people are coached through that. It's like it's a tough time. Okay, process it, give it a little bit of time, and then
be mad, be hurt, be upset. It's okay.
Yeah, and then go from it. Next step.
Yeah.
Learn from it, and then once you learn from it, just leverage it. Go back to it.
Yeah.
And just leverage it.
Well, I think so many people too get stuck in this. When they feel it and they express it, others commiserate. Mm-hmm. Misery loves company, right? You've heard this.
Oh, absolutely.
And so when you have those people who have that, I always say they're down in the mouth. I don't know where my mom or dad taught me that, but they're just always negative.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's people that come around and they're negative. And I would put gossip in that category. Like there's just no energy for gossip. It doesn't have, like, who cares, dude? Like,
right.
Nobody cares. Just focus on what you're trying to do. Learn from it, get better. But this commiseration and this gossip, that drains all of the creative energy you need to synthesize and to transform, because it leaks out into other people. And then you feel stuck because you feel better talking about it.
By the time you need some utility for that mental or creative, energy, it's gone. You don't have it.
You've given it to all the people who listen to you.
Exactly.
And it's wasted, and now you just stay bitter.
Right.
So, and I'm no psychotherapist, and I don't know how all that works, but that's how I practice it.
I wish a lot of these concepts and a lot of these ideas could be taught introduced at a younger age, because I think it would help us a lot.
Agreed.
I don't want to go down to that through that little,
Opening,
but it's really true. That's why I say when you dive into these books that are right behind me, they talk a lot about the mindset, and it's mindset, it's concepts that once you start learning a little bit, you start building better your mindset, which really
Agreed.
helps you elevate and give you perspective and clarity on certain areas. But
Agreed.
it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress.
It is. And to go back to the family real quickly, I think that's one of my growth edges is when I see somebody I love that has got stinking thinking, or that sounds like
there's a negative connotation.
Yeah, it sounds derogatory. It's not intended to be. Like they're stuck in a negative place.
Yeah, negative connotation.
And I feel immediately, I feel empathy for them, and I struggle with using the tools of tactical empathy because I want to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Like, hey, just do this. I have to give my kids credit. They're like, I just need you to help me work through this. Don't try to give me a solution yet. Like, we're still working. We're still collaborating.
It's the wife's just saying, just hug me.
Yeah, right.
Just hold me.
Right.
Don't tell me how to fix it. Just
There you
hold
go.
me and be next to me. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know
Well,
what
and
you mean.
I would argue that the fixing is the trap that keeps us away from the thin place.
Wow.
Right? So if we can find a way to say, I don't need to fix it, I just need to be present because I care about you more than the problem, then we can get to the thin place. And you know what happens? In the book, Never Split the Difference, Chris talks about the chemical reaction in your brain when you have an aha moment. When somebody says, he says, when you get to a place where somebody says, that's right, it's an epiphany, a micro epiphany. And there's actually, according to what he says, is there's an actual wiring in something in your brain that connects you to that person in a way that without that, you don't have it. And when you have that connection, that's the currency that you start to trade in that thin place.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's really it.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I know you got to get rolling. But before we get into final thoughts, tell our listeners where they can connect with you. Where can people reach out? Where can people connect with you?
I would say the best way is probably to email me. It's michael@freedbyrealestate.com. I'm on my phone all the time, and email is the best way to reach me. I also am on Facebook and LinkedIn as well, Instagram. But I'm not as much of a social media person as I probably need to be. I am starting to post some more stuff, but I would say the email is the best.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to give you a couple seconds to think about your final thoughts. But hey, guys, if you guys really enjoyed the value, I know this was packed with value. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, The Omaha Real Deal, where we really want to bring people in that are sharing the wisdom, the strategies, the experience they've, been able to harvest throughout their experience of, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, being a real estate investor. So don't forget to subscribe. That's how we grow. That's how we're able to help more people. And don't forget to subscribe. So Michael, final thoughts. So what do you hope your book, your story, your insights will impact in what does that impact look for you, or what are you trying to do out here in life with all this? What do you want to leave, when God comes knocking and says, hey, Michael, it's time to come home? What do you want people to remember you by?
I think it's first the family legacy, making sure that anybody in my immediate circle has financial freedom and the time freedom that goes with that. If I can leave that for them, it'll be a huge. That's good enough. If I'm honest with myself, I'd say we could stop, and we're well on our way. We haven't maxed out. There's still room for more. People ask me, what is the number, or how many doors do you want, or how much do you want to make? And for me, it's not about that as much as it is what's possible. Yeah. Like, how much is possible? Like, I want to think about a rag that's wet and you want to wring it dry. Like, on my last day, I want the last drop to come out and be like, he's done. All the juice that I had for him to give to the world has been squeezed. And I want it to start with my family, but then I see that as a pond, you know, like you throw a rock in the pond and those rings that go out. We've helped a handful of friends and family invest alongside us, and they have, you know, the same benefits and the same joy of investing without all the work that we do. And I want to help more people do that. So that's where we're headed. We've got, like I told you, we can talk off camera, but we have a whole pipeline of things that we're working on, and look forward to helping many more people along the way.
That's awesome, Michael. I know you're going to be doing this for a long time, and I know you're going to be reaching that objective that you set out to. You know, all of us are. That last drop will come.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your kids' kids, and your kids' kids will say, "Hey, he did a hell of a job for us." So, I wanna tell you thank you for staying around we went longer than expected. I didn't anticipate this.
Well, if you would just listen faster, it would help.
Thank you, Michael, for coming on and sharing all what you shared with our audience.
It's been an honor, dude. I've enjoyed the conversation with you and to get to know you a little bit more, and like we talked about, the resonance that I feel around you is amazing. So thank you. Look forward to more.
Appreciate it. Hey guys, if you guys really enjoyed this content and are enjoying it, make sure to hit the subscribe button. But that's our purpose, is to drive value, bring content to you guys that are really, can be tactical for you guys, and you guys can really take it and run with it. So until next time, guys, stay great. Thank you.
Yeah.